If you rely exclusively on American mainstream media, you may not know this, but there's stuff going on in other countries. And now we're going to take a look at it in a segment we call Meanwhile In. Meanwhile in, or on the moon, apparently we're going to be mining it in like 5 years or something, and the potential economic impact is massive. So the plan is to place a lander on the lunar surface to mine and process regolith for useful, that's the sort of compacted dust-like material that makes up most of the surface of the moon, for useful materials such as water, oxygen, metals, and an isotope called helium-3, which may prove useful for fueling future fusion reactors. Just really fast on that, I believe that that's the same element that the movie Moon that Sam Rockwell was in that I didn't really like, but it was apparently everybody else liked it. Anyway, it's about mining that. Turns out based in fact and very valuable. We don't really have it here because of our atmosphere, but on the moon it is something that exists. That is a dust-like material that covers the lunar surface, and they could use that as well, not just for mining, but also for compacting and forming something to live in on the moon. So why would we want to do this? Why go all the way there to get dust? Well, there's an estimated 1 million tons of helium-3 on the moon. Though only about a quarter of that could be brought to Earth, but that by itself is enough to fuel the world's current energy demands for at least 2 or maybe as many as 5 centuries, according to one expert, who estimates that helium-3 is worth almost $5 billion a ton. I don't know that expert personally, they have experience in aerospace and all of that, but let's say that they're wrong by a lot. Doesn't really matter, that is pretty significant, and imagine what good could come from this. But anytime I talk about something like this, I like to talk about this stuff because I find it inspirational, so much so that I kind of want to write a book about it. But while this is awesome and will probably happen at some point, we cannot allow amazing future technologies like mining helium-3 or anything like it to dissuade us from taking action that is more concrete and actionable right now. So mining the moon is awesome, but doing something about fossil fuels today, even more awesome. And while that's going on, meanwhile in... Meanwhile, in the air, some of it not quite as bright blue as that video we just showed you. The situation with air pollution is actually really bad, worse than we perhaps knew even recently. Deaths caused by air pollution appear to have overtaken those caused by smoking, according to a new study. In 2015, air pollution was thought to be responsible for 8.79 million deaths, compared with the 7.2 million caused by tobacco smoking. Now that is in Europe, and obviously when you expand that over more of the world's surface, both in terms of people who are smoking, but also those who are inhaling that pollution, really bad. Now we find out an additional 790,000 deaths in Europe were likely caused by air pollution, with about 70 to 80% of those associated with cardiovascular disease. And for those who aren't dying from this immediately, they are still suffering from it. An average of about 2.2 years is being shaved off the life of an average European, caused by poor air quality, with the situation being even worse in densely populated urban areas. So, look, this study focused on Europe, but there is every reason to believe that this is true in the US and Asia and Africa and all over the place. And think about that. If I said blank was causing 8 million deaths a year, is there anything other than air pollution I could put in that sentence that would not result in like headline news covering it constantly? Like if I said corgis were killing 8 million people a year, it'd be a big story. If it was Hot Pockets are killing 8 million people, which they might well be, we would talk about it a lot. But when it's air pollution, it's like, yeah, I guess people are getting cardiovascular disease somewhere else. But it's a big issue, and we should probably care about it. Another reason that doing something about climate change could have other effects, like getting pollution out of the air. It doesn't necessarily have to do with carbon in the atmosphere, but there's a lot of other bad stuff out there as well. Meanwhile, in... Meanwhile, in Africa, and I don't want to be remotely flippant about this, multiple countries there are being devastated as a result of flooding caused by Cyclone Idai. It is absolutely terrible, the damage that is wreaking. I was doing some research during the break, and apparently it has resulted in the formation of an inland ocean, a muddy body of water that did not previously exist there, that is 31 miles across. And it is flooding areas dozens and dozens and dozens of miles away from the ocean. That is how devastating it has been so far. It made landfall back on March 14th, The same day that the One Planet Summit started in Nairobi. After picking up speed with winds of 120 miles per hour, accompanied by lashing rains, Idai caused flooding and landslides, ruining crops and roads and already affecting literally millions of people. The cyclone has already claimed over 200 lives in Mozambique, 139 in Zimbabwe, 56 in Malawi, and these numbers are likely out of date. Mozambique recently said that 15,000 people are still stranded and need to be rescued, sometimes in very difficult to reach areas. And the president of Mozambique says that the death toll in that country alone might already be as high as 1,000. They just can't confirm it at this point. And by the way, the cyclone's path, 1.5 million people potentially affected by it. So again, look, I understand why we would be more, attentive to extreme weather events that are affecting, Texas or here in California, we've got the fires. But devastating extreme weather events are happening in other parts of the world as well, sometimes with even far higher death tolls, entire cities and towns being wiped out, entire croplands being destroyed, and we are still in the thick of it there. There are still, again, far over 10,000 people in individual countries that need to be rescued. One more piece of news, though. Meanwhile, in New Zealand, they are actually doing something about gun control after another massacre. They could perhaps teach us something here in the US. Here is the Prime Minister.
Today I'm announcing that New Zealand will ban all military-style semi-automatic weapons. We will also ban all assault rifles. We will ban all high-capacity magazines. We will ban all parts with the ability to convert semi-automatic or any other type of firearm into a military-style semi-automatic weapon. We will ban parts that cause a firearm to generate semi-automatic, automatic, or close to automatic gunfire. In short, every semi-automatic weapon used in the terrorist attack on Friday will be banned in this country.
So that was Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern listing off changes that they're making. Any one of those changes is arguably more than we have done in this country after countless massacres, not necessarily always on the scale of the tragedy that New Zealand dealt with last week, but the death toll here, obviously terrible as well. Hopefully we will learn from their example. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on Twitter pointed out that Sandy Hook happened 6 years ago, and we can't even get a Senate vote on universal background checks. Not banning things, not taking things out of stores, just on checking to see who it is that is buying the sorts of weapons that terrorists so often choose to use. So hopefully in America we will take this as inspiration and follow in their wake. Thank you very much for watching this clip from the Damage Report. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell on YouTube to get notifications of our new videos. And of course, you can catch the full Damage Report live every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific on TYT Network on YouTube TV.